Bill, how old were you when you got into the military?
I was 20 years of age.
What made you decide military?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I didn't have a full-time job. I was doing part-time work. I also worked in carpentry and masonry and that kind of work, and I was working for myself, doing some part-time work. Wasn't doing real well at that, so I also checked with the Lafayette County Selective Service, and my name was pretty close to being pulled up to go with the Army because we had the draft in place at that time. And I got to looking at my options, and I said, the Navy is a good place to go because I think I can learn something there. I can travel. I can see a lot of places I'm currently not able to do, and so that basically made up my mind, and I did that.
What was the training like? What were some of your duties?
I was fortunate. I'm a tall fella. I'm about 6'1", a little over, and many of the people in my company that I was in, it was Company 517, were much shorter. So our company commander had 6 squadrons, and I was one of the 6 that he picked to be a squadron leader because of my height. Now that's all that had to do with anything. But in the process, that also gave me some rank, and I had a couple stripes on my shoulders that I was able to use for leadership purposes. And so through boot camp, I actually controlled this squadron of mine of 10 folks. And when we had cleanup duties and all, my job, of course, was to tell them what to do. I didn't have to do it, but make sure they did their job. And then when we went to the galley duty, well, my job was to make sure they cleaned up and kept things in order. I didn't have to do the sweeping and the swabbing and some of those things. So that was an advantage for myself. And that was a little over 3 months of San Diego duty, doing that kind of thing. But while I was there, we also took a lot of tests. We took a lot of training. We took aptitude tests. We took IQ tests, and I guess I scored pretty well on some of those things. And when it came time to go to school, I was given 3 choices of school to go to. My first one was I thought maybe I wanted to go to sea, and there's the NOAA thing. There's also the oceanography, some of those kinds of things that interested me, and also aerographer. And aerographer in layman's terms is meteorology. Well, I put all 3 down, and I was selected to go to meteorology school, or aerographer school, as the Navy calls it. So after boot training, then I got orders to Lakehurst, New Jersey, and I attended meteorology school, or Navy terms, aerographer school, for 6 months, and that was 8 hours a day of training of schooling. And when I completed that in the spring of 1960, I was assigned then to Naval Air Station, Barbers Point, Hawaii, and I worked out of the tower on that location.
What was it like being a 20-year-old boy from Higginsville to now go and see the world and even become a meteorologist?
I would never thought in 100 years that I would ever be doing something like that. While it's interesting, I think everybody talks about the weather, can't do anything about it. But that would just sound like something I'd like to do, and I was very happy that the Navy selected myself to go to that school. They needed several meteorologists then, and it was a good school for me to go to because it did well. In my career, why I did pretty good, and it worked out well for me there in the Navy. A kid, 20 years of age, not having gone very far from Missouri, had been very few places outside the state of Missouri. Maybe Iowa was about as far as I'd been. Yeah, it was scary. I did, by the way, have a friend from Higginsville who joined the Navy with me at the same time. So we were friends, and we stayed together through boot training, and that helped a whole lot to have someone that you close to, went to school with, and now we're in the Navy together. And that was a lot of comfort from that. But there were days when it was lonesome, and there were days, especially on the weekends, when basically we didn't have any particular thing to do except just kind of hang around. That was on Sunday. And write letters home, they encouraged us to do that. And take care of ourselves and keep our barracks and things clean and that kind of thing. But there were times when it was lonesome, and I'd much rather be busy. No matter what it was, I'd rather be busy. But we were given things that we could do, and there was a rowing team. I actually got on the rowing team, and we rowed up and down the channel out there, and we did pretty well at that. I'd never done that before. That was fun. And then I played on a basketball team, and we did some sport things. And I liked marching. When we were actually drilling and marching, I enjoyed that part of it as well. I liked the discipline of the service, and I liked the discipline that we had to adhere to. A lot of guys didn't like that, but I still like that. I enjoy having things done right and put in place and that kind of thing.
The structure of everything.
The structure, I do like that. But when basic training was over, of course, now I'm feeling somewhat comfortable now because I've been out there 3 months in San Diego. Now I'm going to a new duty station, and I'm going by myself, and I've got duty papers to direct me to where to go. And so at 20 years of age, I'm lining this all up, thinking, oh man, I've got to do my own air flights. I had to take care of that. I'd never done that before, fly out of an airplane, never been on one before. And so again, I thank the Navy for that because they taught me how to grow up kind of in a hurry and be responsible and do some of those kind of things. But anyway, I did make those arrangements, and I flew into, I think New York is where actually the plane landed, and then caught transportation down to Lakehurst, New Jersey, which is just about an hour south of there. It's where the meteorology school was. And checked in and showed my orders, and they assigned me a barracks and a place to sleep, and then for the next 6 months, that's where I was.
For people that don't know, describe the conflict. Describe what's going on during that time.
Within myself?
In terms of military service, in terms of what the military is doing during this time, because I think a lot of people don't understand really what was going on. They know the Vietnam, they know World War II, but they don't know what was going on during that time. So if you will, just kind of talk to me about that conflict.
Well, for the most part, it was a time of relatively peace as I knew it then, but everything wasn't really at peace. I was in when the Bay of Pigs thing happened. The disturbance in Cuba was, and the Cold War with Russia and that whole business was going on. And I guess I didn't think about it because as a weatherman, I don't have a big old part to play, and I didn't think so, at least in that. I was in Hawaii for 2 years, and it didn't seem to be much going on from a world standpoint. It's when I got on board ship after that 2-year duty and getting out of the meteorology school that I went aboard ship, and that then told me, as I traveled the Pacific Ocean and visited all the other islands and visited Japan and the Philippines and Okinawa and Taiwan, Midway Island, I could go on and on and on, and our ship visited all those places, that we weren't liked by everybody. And of course, as I went to the east and visited Japan and the Philippines, I began to hear more about what turned out to be the Vietnam War. Again, I wasn't too nervous about that, I guess. 20 years of age, I guess they would tell me what I need to do. But there was that element of something in the stir. And had I stayed in more than 4 years, I probably would have gone to Vietnam. Just so it turned out my enlistment was up in '63, and I got out of the service, so I didn't have to do that. But as we all know now, history tells us there were some bad things happening. I was on board ship in San Francisco. This was my duty station where the ship pulled in for 3 days. Actually, we call it our home port. And we had just been from Japan, and we came in and tied up at Oakland Pier in California. And we weren't there very long, and we were told to get back on board ship. We usually have 3 days liberty, and the ship didn't have 3 days, so we pulled out and we went to San Diego. We didn't get liberty there. And I'm going, this is strange. And all I could see was a lot of materials being loaded on board the ship I was on. I was on a cargo transport ship. That's the type of ship I was on. And all night long we were loading supplies and different things, and I'm thinking, this is unreal. It just doesn't make sense. I've watched this happen before, but this is different. And then we got underway without ever getting off the board the ship, and we headed south, which is not where we normally go. We would head for Hawaii. Yet I could see the shore and the coastline of California and Mexico even the next day. And then finally the captain came aboard, or came on the radio, and he said that we were heading for the Panama Canal, and because of the Cuban crisis. And maybe you're aware of that. I know it's history to you, but I lived it, so it is true to me. So our ship was sent through the Panama Canal and to Cuban waters and to the island of Cuba. And we were there to evacuate people if and when those missiles took off, or we had to fight the Russians or whatever we were going to do. So I was involved in the missile crisis of October the 13th of 1962. That's where our ship went. Fortunately, those 13 days, why smarter heads and cooler heads prevailed, and we didn't have a war, and the missiles turned around and went back home. And when that happened, then we went back through the Panama Canal back out to the Pacific Ocean and resumed our normal duties. So yeah, I had a feeling of how war was. We didn't fire a bullet. I didn't have to go fight anybody, but it was very close, and it was a tense situation.
What was life like on the ship? Did you ever get seasick?
I'm glad you asked that, and I don't know why I didn't, but I never did even feel uncomfortable. And many of our people did. Even some of the sailors on board just couldn't take the rolling and the pitching of the ship. And I actually enjoyed it when it was kind of rough. I'd go up on I was on the 04 level. That's where my duty station was. That means 4 decks above the main deck. That's where we were. So I was up pretty high. And I would actually go and sit and hold onto the rail and just let the ship's bow go under, and the salt spray come back and hit me in the face. And that was kind of, when you're out there and you can't see anything, it's dark, especially at night, and there's no moon or anything, it's pretty dark. But I enjoyed that part of it. I used to actually like sailing. That was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed that. It was comforting to me to do that. The rest of the time, we ate well. Our barracks were nothing too great. At least they were usable. That's about what it was. And I was on board with another meteorologist. There were just 2 of us on board the ship, so we worked almost 24 hours a day. Somebody had to catch a few hours of sleep, but that's kind of how it was. We just, weather goes on continually, so somebody had to be awake, every hour of the day. And we took hourly observations. We sent up big balloons, radiosondes, and we tracked those things. And it took a while to compile that information and get it sent back to the other stations that received that, other ships, airplanes that were in the air, and of course a lot of duty or shore stations around. We'd report that information and send it out, and then receive it as well, so we could draw maps and do that. But as far as the ship goes, it wasn't lonely there. We got mail pretty often, and my wife was really good about sending mail, and she did. Sometimes I'd get 3 in one time. That was really good. And we had our friends that we associated with. By this time, I'm now an E5. I've graduated from an E1 recruit up to an E5 petty officer, and so we had a special locker where we had our own refrigerator. We could go in and get into the refrigerator and get something to snack on if we wanted to. But the food on board ship was outstanding and never was bad. And so we all ate very well. If we were hungry, we had plenty to eat, and it was no problem. So we really had pretty comfortable. It wasn't bad at all.
What would you say are maybe some of the most memorable moments that you had overall your time in the military?
I think when we stepped off the ship in a foreign place, through Panama as an example, we did get off the ship there, and just you can't go far because you're on foot, So we go at the first place that allows somebody in, but wearing the uniform, and the people knew who we were, and we were always treated with respect. I never felt like I was in danger, or if anybody hated me. I'm sure that element was around there someplace, but at least where I was, it was comfortable. I usually had 1 or 2 guys with me, and we had friends on. We made friends as you do. You're going to. The ship had 365 people on board, and so you pick out a few that you work with or you're associating with, and it was kind of good. But I was always proud to wear the uniform, and still I'm proud that I did. That was good to do that. In Japan, we tied up at Yokosuka, we tied up at Osaka and Yokohama, and then of course in the Philippines we tied up at Taiwan. And Taiwan was kind of in a turmoil there, and so we didn't get far from the ship when we were there. I might even go back to the Panama Canal briefly. We were told not to stay on the outer decks very long. We had to move around the ship as it was going through the locks, but not to stay out on the outer decks very long, because there were some renegades still up in the hills that would try to pick people off as they travel through the Panama Canal. So I didn't stay outside very long. I'd stay indoors and not give them a target. I never felt like I was threatened, but we were sure given that warning. So there were places around as we traveled through that people were still, I guess, angry at the United States for something, and didn't care who they took it out on, I guess. So, but I survived without any problem, and most of us did. It wasn't any big deal.